Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Workplace Wanderer Lessons from the Experts. I'm just going to call it out right in the beginning. Had a sinus infection recently. I'm not going to go into the gross details. I'm a little nasal. So if you're going to struggle listening to this, maybe slow it down a bit and it'll make my voice sound a little bit deeper. But for right now, you just got to deal with it. There's nothing I can do. I'm sorry. I am excited today about what we're going to be discussing. And I'm excited about my guest. It's somebody I've known for quite a while, somebody who's always impressed me. And we always do a little bit of a pre-discussion before we start recording. There's some things I saved because I wanted to say it on the podcast itself. But today, the topic is leading with the heart. And it's really about adapting and adopting individualized approaches to each situation and each person that we're working with, especially in executive coaching or professional coaching relationships. So today, my guest is none other than the Klifton Fehr.
I love it. Hey, thank you so much, Blake. I really appreciate the opportunity to once again just kind of be hanging out with you, but more
Yeah,
importantly, actually working with you. It just seems like we're in a new chapter of our own respective professional development, and to kind of be full circle in a full circle moment where
yeah,
we're sharing space and just doing some work together.
no,
I'll
it's
go ahead and
cool.
say it. I
It's
am.
really cool.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I just was going to say that. It is cool. It's good to see you. Yeah, I think you're somebody who's always brought a bit of light to the room. And I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then I kind of want to tell you some things from my perspective that I hope you know about yourself, but I just want to give you some compliments right up front to kind of boost your ego as we go into this. But as always, I like to have our guests introduce themselves. This is in an attempt to be more inclusive and to allow people to represent themselves in the way that they'd like to be represented. So Clifton, how would you like to introduce yourself today?
So I am Klifton Fehr. Pronouns are he, him. Um, I am originally a licensed mental health counselor. I still have that license and do practice in the state of Florida. And I also am an executive and professional coach. I have accounts throughout the US, and I do a lot of work within organizations as it relates to DEI, corporate culture, company culture, working with their systemic challenges, training and development as it relates to C-suite executives and middle management.
Amazing.
Yes, sir.
So that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a
So
lot.
when we first met, we were working for a program in the mental health field that had a really cool twist on it, that they infused music and everything that they did. And you were, I believe, the program director at the time, right?
I had a couple of different hats throughout the time
Yeah.
there. Yep.
Um, there's like an area of interest for me that I've been focusing on recently, and it's actually something I'm exploring for the possibility of a new book idea. And it's really about what I call the most valuable leader. And it's a focus, though, on the people who aren't at the top, but people who are within the organization that just have that something different. And whether it's charisma, whether it's intelligence, whether it's planning abilities, it doesn't really matter. It's just something that without them, the organization feels empty. And I've always felt that when I look back and reflect on Recovery Unplugged and working there, I always think that about you, that you were the MVL of that program, and that there was something about when you were around, the program felt whole. And you brought a certain energy and a certain ambiance and essence to the clinical care and to the program and just to the culture that I don't think can be replicated or can't be bottled. It was just something about you that made you one of the most valuable people at that program. And you made it fun and you made it engaging and you really did bring people together. And when I look at all of the different aspects and characteristics of the most valuable leaders, that's exactly what they do, is that it's really about they're that connecting force that bring people together and creates meaningful relationships. So I just wanted to give you that compliment, let you know like that's always how I viewed you. And I think you bring that energy to everything that you do. And I can even see it on social media when I see your videos.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, Blake. And amazingly enough, as you were talking, and really giving that just a beautiful description of the energy or the life, or that piece that I did add to the organization, I realized that the organization that we worked for really did trust me to really provide the heart or the um, I, I, I'm looking for the perfect word. They provided me with the opportunity to actually um, to bring out or create the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably appropriate. And I didn't necessarily see that at the time. I really felt like there was just a lot of pressure to produce as it relates to content. Programming is something that does require a lot of boxes to check, but it also demands that there's a great degree of creativity. So I guess they didn't even know what they were doing for a person like myself, which is just kind of giving me the keys to the kingdom to be able to go in and have fun. I love that part, and I try to make sure I bring that type of energy and approach to everything that I do, whether it was then and especially now.
Yeah.
Uh, so I really appreciate you saying that. That's humbling. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's something that I've noticed and wanted to point out. And I'm wondering what lesson we can pull out there at an organizational level, zooming out a little bit, what you just said about an organization allowing you to really kind of hone in on what makes you authentic and unique and valuable to a program or to any organization. I'm wondering like what that says about an organization or what lesson we can pull from that.
So the wild part about that within organizations is first and foremost, leaders have to be aware of who their talent is or who their people are. If they're not in close communication, doing those one-to-ones once a week, once every other week, they may miss out on some valuable opportunities to actually see what kind of talent and skills and abilities and just awesomeness and creativity that their teams actually bring to the table, whether it be collectively, but more importantly, individually. And I think that that's something that we all could do better in our own respective organizations, is just making sure that we are really digging out some of those unique skills, abilities, and talents within our teams.
I think you bring up a great point, and it actually really leads us into today's topic, which is leading with heart. And to me, when I hear leading with heart, I'm thinking about that exactly what you just said of being in tune with the people that you work with and being able to recognize what their individual needs are, but also what their individual talents are, their abilities, superpowers, and then being able to capitalize on those, and not in a nefarious way, but being able to capitalize them in a way that's going to make your organization better.
It makes it better by default, Blake, because of the fact that when you are able to see someone, right? Like seeing them, not just like, oh, hey, good to see you again, but actually seeing uh, when they smile or when they get excited about a particular project or those respective outcomes that they have been working their behinds off for the last quarter to reach. When you see them in that moment, all of a sudden they go from being a statistic, right? Like data,
Mhm.
bottom line, salary, and they turn into like real people. And the leading organizations, the leading companies across the country, across the globe, find ways of seeing their people. And all of a sudden, it goes from being a very static, stale process to a dynamic and vibrant experience. And I think that was something that we were trying to provide to the company we worked with before. Which, by the way, full disclosure, whenever we did work together, I always felt like I was trying to, believe it or not, match that energy that you also brought on a day-to-day basis, which was really interesting to see, I guess, right now in this moment, looking back on how one kind of begets the other, and then that energy, that excitement that you brought, You saw it because you had it in you. So now all of a sudden, like, we're not just vibrating here as individuals, we're vibrating here because of the fact that now we're bouncing off of each other. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden that juice is just flowing between each other, between the teams and within the organization.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about allowing people within your organization to be authentic and to be their unique self, is that then it pulls that uniqueness out of other people around them. And it lets me know, I see you, laughing and jumping around, making jokes and taking your job seriously, but bringing your authentic self to work. It tells me, hey, dude, you're safe to bring your authentic self to the job too. And you should bring your uniqueness out and showcase it for everybody else to see. And it sort of starts this domino effect where everyone feels safe and comfortable to be vulnerable, to express their ideas, to express their sense of humor, their dark sides, their worries, whatever it may be. They feel safe because they're seeing other people like mirror or model that type of authenticity and type of behavior.
I feel like the thing that keeps leaders from gifting that level of trust to their teams to operate that way, right? To function at that level. I feel like trust becomes an issue because of the fact that the concern is, well, how will this be perceived by another department, i.e., HR? Or how will this be interpreted in the in the boardroom, or with the private equity group that's backing that organization? And the realization is that any good, solid organization, whether they're vibrant or they're, cookie cutter, dull, very, we're going to get it done, whatever that is, like, you've already established the construct for how you need this team to function. Hopefully, you've already come up with your OKRs, your objectives and key results. So you know the marks that you need to hit or the benchmarks that you need to reach. Separate and apart from that, the way you get the way you get there with the greatest amount of ease, right, is really being able to kind of turn over the reins to your team. Once you've said, okay, we're here with our numbers and our projections, we need to be here by the end of the quarter or by the end of the year. Here you go.
Right.
Go get it. Have fun.
Yeah.
Like, take charge. Go make it awesome. Come back to me and let me know if you have any questions.
So you're
I'm
saying sort of like setting up a professional framework with
Yeah.
goals and a vision for where we want to be, and then allowing and giving ownership to the employees to use their unique talents to be able to accomplish those goals without constraints of having to behave a certain way.
Yeah, because the constructs are already there. They know what they have to do if you're clear with them in the team meeting, right? In the departmental meeting. Um, you just need to give them the support, the breathe life into them, the encouragement in order to go and be whoever they need to be in order to get to that number. If
Okay.
you start pulling back on those reins, even within that framework, you start stifling people, and then the anxiety goes up, and performance goes down, and it becomes a headache, and then I get calls.
Yeah. And I do want to caveat all of this conversation because there's a lot of talk about authentic leadership that goes around. It's become sort of like a buzzword. Everybody talks about authentic leadership.
Right.
And I would say probably, and this is an arbitrary number, I don't have any data to back this up, but there's about like 70% of people who misunderstand what that means. And they think that, oh, I can be my authentic self, which means I can behave and act however I want at all situations. And it removes the professionalism from the conversation. And the reality is that there's a professional authentic self that you have to be. So when we're talking about this conversation or this situation that we were in, where we worked, you were your authentic self and you brought your unique talents and abilities to the organization, but you always stayed within a professional constraint or professional constraint, within in a certain realm, and never kind of broke that professionalism because it'd be detrimental to do so.
And it would be poor modeling, right? You spoke
Right.
about that earlier. Um, the organization or good organizations actually are very clear on those boundaries, the
Yeah.
out of bounds versus inbounds.
Right.
And that was made very clear. Uh, Fortunately for us, we really had a lot of room to play in. Um, but I was very clear on this is what it looks like for me to be able to show up and be a professional. Uh, and I believe, oh, look, there's the puppy. Um, and I believe that within itself gave me peace of mind to know what's too far and how much more space I had before I reached that line that proverbial line that I could cross over.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
And there is a reality too, also that like if you do allow, if you have a culture that allows for people to be their authentic self, there is going to be a likelihood that people are going to step over that boundary or push those boundaries at times. And I'm very proud to say I was only called into HR's office one time working for that job, and because I took a prank too far with
I
somebody.
wish I could say the same.
Yeah.
I could say the same for the poor HR directors.
I know, I know. I I remember them reading back to me something like a note that I wrote to somebody as a joke, and they had the note and they're reading it to me, and I'm trying so hard not to laugh because it was serious to them. But that's the way that they even approached that conversation wasn't like you are in trouble, was like,
Right.
hey, this went over the boundary. Please try to stay within those boundaries. And of course, it depends on the offense. If somebody
Yeah, of
punches
course.
somebody or something like that, we're talking different stuff. But they were able to look at the situation in context and say Blake had no ill intent. He just went over the line. He would joke too much. He pranked somebody too far. It wasn't intended to harm anybody or hurtful. It's just not something we want to do here. This is too far.
Yeah, I think circling back to the the wordage that you use, which was being an authentic leader. Um, the realization, like, is that like we're all professionals. I didn't get the job because I was some schlep that they just brought in. That was like, oh, well, you're a fun person. Maybe you can do this job. It was
Right.
like they picked us. They picked us to actually come in and do something and be effective within the organization. And I believe that you actually had an experience that was very positive. It was very reaffirming uh, as to who you are as a professional, because they didn't shame you. They didn't disrespect you. They really said, hey, we want to keep it here. You're out here. You're like a step removed from it. Let's bring it back. Which is good because it gives you some constructive feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
gonna happen, right? I mean, you're gonna have people when you give them the reins and you encourage them to be the authentic leader. There may be some times where you have to pull it back in, and it's not a bad thing. It's not. It doesn't have to be a stressful moment. It's just you reiterating and even giving yourself an opportunity to coach your
Mhm.
team, and that's God, that's so amazing because you get an opportunity to reinforce and reestablish those relationships with your team members when you call them into the office and you say,
Yeah.
hey, I want to talk to you about something. You're doing great in these areas. I want us to get better over here because this is a little loose,
Right.
right?
Yeah. It's exactly right. I also want to give credit to the company because they taught me probably one of the most valuable lessons about culture when I got there. And it's something that I think about often is that, and I want to be clear, I loved the place I worked before, but it was a very different culture, a little bit more sterile, I'll say. So when I got to this place that we both worked at, I remember right away having to go to some type of event for them. And I posted a picture online of me at this event, and I got a call immediately from somebody in leadership, and they went, Blake, I saw what you were wearing at the conference. Do me a favor, take that vest you were wearing, burn it. That is not you. You look like you were playing a role. I know that's not you. be yourself. You can dress how you want to dress, represent us, because that's what we believe. We believe everybody's a rock star in their own right. Everybody's unique. We want you to shine. Don't try to be someone you're not. And it caught me off guard at first because I'm like, how do I balance this? I'm supposed to be a professional. And I realized that you can be a professional while you still are yourself, which really speaks to the point that you were making is there's certain professional boundaries that we put on ourselves even, and then we can figure out within those boundaries, how do we express our authentic self?
There's something magical about that, Blake. And I don't know how quickly you settled into that adjustment, but I would hope that, well, I've seen it, and I guess I'm asking this for the audience, for the viewing and listening audience, but how long did it take for you to make that adjustment? Like, what was it?
Yeah.
Was it soon? Did you struggle with it to actually be more of Blake?
Um, yeah, I think I had to figure out a little bit more of who I was. It was not, I don't want to give it too much weight, like it was some type of identity crisis,
No, no,
but
not at all.
it, I'm a firm believer in that we have multiple selves depending on where we are and who we're with. And it took me a little bit to deprogram who I thought I was supposed to be at work, and especially in a leadership role. It was exactly that, a role. It was almost like I was playing a role for, like I was acting based on what I thought a leader was supposed to be like, a manager was supposed to be like. And so it took me some deprogramming to realize that I'm not supposed to be acting. I got that role because of who I am. So I need to keep honoring my authentic self in that way, while also using certain soft skills and certain human skills to be able to be a better manager and to listen to other people. But I didn't have to behave a certain way in order to be looked at or to be a good and effective manager. So I want to move into the topic that we were going to discuss today, which was leading with heart. And just to clarify something really quickly, um, I have two questions based on your background. So you're a licensed mental health counselor,
Yes, sir.
and now you're doing that still, but you've moved into a coaching role. For the audience, can you tell me a little bit about what's the difference between uh, being a therapist and being a coach, and where do you feel that that overlaps? How do you feel that benefits you?
So I would say the biggest difference between being a therapist and a coach is probably going to be um, I'm thinking about like 10 different ones that are running through my head. I'll say the first one that comes to mind, and that's going to be the stakeholder, right? As a coach, I'm usually hired by an organization to come in and do work for them. So I report to someone as it relates to the work that I'm doing, i.e., and I got this at my feet because I'm working on the project now. This is this is 9 different leaders that I'm working with right now, and
Wow.
I report to the director of HR, the chief HR officer, and their staff about how their respective middle managers are developing based on the 360 review that they did pre, and they'll do one post. So that I feel like that's probably an immediate difference, because when I'm in counseling, pending they're 18 years or older, I'm really just working with them unless they come up with a crisis where they want to hurt themselves or someone else. I have a duty to warn, things of that nature, and that's usually to the authorities or to a hospital of some sort. Um, but when it comes to coaching, I feel like that's probably one of the immediate things that I think about, because private equity groups, especially if they're doing the ones that's if they're the ones that are hiring me to come in and work with the C-suite executives, they really do want to have a handle on how that respective program that I've been contracted to provide, how that's kind of developing, because they invest serious money. So
Yeah,
I can respect that.
sure.
So that's an immediate one, and I I believe that my like it's more brief solution focused with the coaching aspect,
Mm,
uh, heavily brief solution focused with the coaching aspect compared to counseling. Because with counseling, we can sit and take our time with this, right? Let's unpack it. Let's get comfortable in it. We want to get comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? But with coaching, it's like, hey, this is an issue. This came up on your 360. You got to get better with your communication with your team. You need to change the way that you're managing your time. Let's go ahead and put some actionable steps down. Let's check back next week or at the end of this week. I need you to send me an email or a follow-up text. Like it's very, regimented and it moves really quickly. Whereas with counseling, it's an unfolding process, right?
okay.
Um, so I would say those two things really do stick out the most as it relates to coaching versus counseling.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When we talk about leading with heart, and we're specifically focusing, obviously, given the title of the podcast, we're specifically focusing on organizations or workplaces or executives. Uh, when we talk about leading with heart, I sort of see this as a twofold mission. So one, it's when we look at the problems or the issue that we're looking to help solve. It's about looking past the surface of it and looking at what's really going on underneath the surface. We're looking at the heart of the matter. The other side of it I see is as the helping professional, the consultant, the coach, us not going into situations with a certain structure or curriculum in mind and not going into every problem and trying to plug it in to the curriculum that we typically use. It's us looking at it in a more individualized and authentic way. Does that make sense? And am I interpreting this correctly?
So I do hear you, and it does make a lot of sense. I'll give you a specific example. I just completed a contract with an organization, and when we went into discussions about what the program would look like, uh, I could feel the stakeholder really kind of trying to put me into a bit of a box as it related to how I was supposed to engage with the staff, what they expected of me, which is fine. I have no problems meeting those expectations. But when you're telling a consultant such as myself that not only do we want you to provide us with all your respective notes on those team members, I'm getting uncomfortable just even talking about it. Um, but you also expect me to deal with each respective person this way, right?
Mhm.
Like you just killed the opportunity for that this a coach or a consultant to actually be effective because now you've broken confidentiality between the consultant and that respective coachee, and you also limited what tools or techniques that need to be uncovered during the process or need to be visited or need to be utilized during the coaching sessions or the coaching time period. It's not only unfair for me, it's unethical, right?
Yeah.
Not now I'm telling somebody, I'm telling a coachee, and I say coachee because that's just the terminology. I'm telling a coachee that I don't want you to grow in this area except for this way. You can only do it this way because that's what I've been afforded, and it's very stifling, and
Yeah.
it ultimately speaks to the culture of the organization. So I then realized this is not where the issue is; it's up here, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
This is a trickle down effect, and this is coming from the C-suite, or it's coming from the private equity group, and their idea of how the organization or how the people in the organization should be operating is limited. So now I need to have a different conversation. So I usually back out of the interactions or the coaching sessions if it's coming up in midstream, and I circle back to the stakeholder and I speak directly to them about what I'm finding or what I'm unable to do based on the constraints. Does that make
Uh,
sense?
yes, I love that. I think in helping professions, we want to feel like we're giving the client what they want and need. It's just sort of a natural part of this. However, sometimes what the client thinks that they want or need isn't actually what they want or need. And it requires us to have a bit of a difficult conversation with them, and can also be very uncomfortable for us because we're sort of saying, hey, that's not actually what you need. There's a bigger problem here. So I
It
think when you say that, it's just I'm just honoring how much of a challenge it is and how delicate of a situation that is for both you and the coachee, as you called it, to go into that deeper level conversation saying, hey, this is what you're asking for. It's not what you need.
it's irresponsible though, as the as the hired professional, to go along with it. It would be much like a client in counseling coming to me saying, I need to focus on my ADHD, when in reality, as the trained professional, I'm seeing that they have more of an issue with anxiety, and it's not about the symptomatology surrounding ADHD. There may
Right.
be some parallels, but I've been gifted with a license and the responsibility to step up and speak directly to what I see, what I understand, and what I'm responsible for addressing. So I say this to anybody who's trying to go into the coaching field or even the counseling field. You have to make sure that you use your position as a consultant or a counselor to actually speak truth, right? To
Mhm.
to be that authentic leader and actually model that for your client, whether it's a stakeholder or a counseling client. It's just, it has to happen.
It should be a common practice. And the reason why I brought up what I did is that I think we're all challenged with our own feelings and emotions. Even as coaches and consultants, we go into these situations wanting to please and wanting to do a good job. So
We
it's,
also motivated by money. I mean, this is
yeah,
a professional, this is a profession that we get paid. So
100%.
there's a conflict also. Do I say
Yeah.
something and risk, losing this contract? But the realization is that you won't be able to hit your target. You won't be able to complete that contract with the utmost efficacy or honesty, for that matter, if you don't say something. So the money is like a distant second at that time.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly some of the feelings and emotions that I'm referring to is, we want to do a good job. We want to also get paid. We need, there's sometimes a scarcity mindset, or we need a client, we need to pay our bills. And it could be scary to confront the situation, but it's our duty to always think long term in, can I truly help this client and give them what they need, first of all? And second of all, we need to think long term for our own businesses and say, if I do agree to what this person is asking and it ends up failing like I believe it will, because this approach isn't going to give them what they need, then that's a mark on my reputation in
One
the end.
hundred percent. 100%. You nailed it,
It's,
because I was sitting here thinking about it.
yeah, it's about being ethical to the client, but also to ourselves and to our own business and honoring those commitments. And I would guess that probably 9 times out of 10, the client would be interested to hear what we have to say, and they'll probably agree with what we have to say. That, hey, you're seeing the issue here as one thing, but it's a lot larger of an issue.
Yeah.
There's a great book for anyone out there who's in helping professions called, I don't, maybe you've heard of it or not, I'm not sure. Um, Helping by Edgar Sheen. And he talks a lot about this exact topic. It's one of the best books on consulting I have ever read. And he gives you a lot of practical knowledge and practical tools, but he makes that point constantly that most of the time when a person presents a problem to us, there's a bit of a vulnerable interaction going on where the person now coming to us with a problem is one down, we're one up. We're seen as the expert. They're coming to us with a problem. They're a bit ashamed. And because of that, they tend to present to us the wrong problem, or the problem in a lens that maybe is like in a very tight scope. So it's our job to continually ask questions and work as what he calls process consultants, to not be an expert, but to be a process consultant, to ask enough questions to start going past what they're asking us for, to then get at the root of the issue and then be able to help them with that root issue.
The wild part about it is that, built into, counseling work, we do a biopsychosocial. So we get more of a broader conceptualization of the client and their respective presenting problem.
Right.
With coaching, it does require questions because it elicits additional trust. You build into that relationship and the rapport, uh, because you're gifting that client or that coachee an opportunity to speak more into the mic, and talk more about themselves, which is something that you need to have. You got to have that, not only that trust, but you got to have them comfortable with being disclosing about, what's preventing them from actually reaching their respective goal for the end of their experience with you.
Mhm.
It would be a shame to have developed them in a specific area, and okay, you can check that box. You helped them with that presenting problem, and then because of the fact that you didn't get to the underlying issue, they don't have the legs to actually carry that success. So ultimately, you wind up shooting yourself in the foot with your own respective efficacy as a coach or a consultant.
Yeah. It almost sounds like you're saying that we have to remove our own egos from the situation and really highlight what the other person needs and really get down to the root of it.
Yeah. We get engaged and locked in on, oh yeah, I'm going to take care of that thing. And we can't fall prey to being narrow minded with our own approach to helping them. We have to be more secure and sound in our practice. That inevitably is the thing that we fall back on as we kind of like open up the doors and windows to this whole situation that the client's presenting. And now we allow just some air to flow, and we see, okay, there are some other things here that we can actually take a look at and work on in order to have them sustain that success.
Right. Yeah, because they're not going to have us forever,
Yeah.
and that we can't go in there and be that hero and try to fix the situation and then have them rely on us. And that's the same that goes with therapy. It's same to go with anything, any type of helping profession, is that we're going in there to set them up for success so that they can sustain that success long term. I think I heard a quote. The quote was, is our duty as a helping professional going into an organization is to not be the hero, but to empower the client and the organization to be the hero.
100%. That quote is exactly what I hope that every coach out there that's listening to this podcast and seeing our faces, they're actually internalizing that message, because it's not about you. It's not about you.
Exactly.
Once you've
No.
been hired, congratulations. Now you got to show up and make sure that you do the work for those coachees so that they can be successful, because that's ultimately what you've been hired for, to
Yeah.
make them a success, not you. Right?
And that's exactly why it goes back to the leading with heart piece, is that we need to have our hearts open. We need to be able to listen to what the actual problem is and then help them build that solution to their own problem through asking the right questions, through the right advice, mentorship along the way. But it's not, that's why we can't go in with some type of structured mindset of what we're going to do with an organization. We have to be adaptable and be able to be flexible in the moment and to ask enough questions for them to figure out the solution. Organizational consultants and leadership development professionals, whatever it may be, we're basically bridge builders. And they want to get from point A to point B. We're just there to help build a bridge. And this bridge is just built out of questions. It's built out of really good questions to help the person find the solutions.
Leading from the heart, Blake, or coaching from the heart, or counseling from the heart, just living from the heart. Um, it's something that I hold on to, and the quote that keeps coming to mind is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Hmm.
And I feel like that was consistently the theme that I woke up to on a day-to-day basis when we worked together in the past. And I know that's the way that I live from a day-to-day basis today, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Um, you gotta care. And those questions are questions of care. They're questions
Right.
of concern.
There,
There's an investment there.
you cannot ask a good question if you don't care, because you can't truly be listening if you don't care. Well, man, I think we can go on forever with this conversation, but I do try to keep this podcast to a certain time limit. So I just got to say, man, this was a great conversation. I feel like there's so many little golden nuggets in this that I really hope that brings a lot of value to the people who are listening and watching. I am curious though, one, what type of if an organization is looking to find you and they're looking for solutions to a type of problem, what type of problems are you looking to solve?
Oh man. I'd love to be able to say sky's the limit, but I think that's a bit selfish. Uh, Currently I'm really working on trying to develop leaders and help them become more effective at connecting with their teams and helping those team members develop into better leaders.
Okay.
So, I want to work with companies who are actually trying to find someone that can come in and help their leaders grow as leaders.
Okay. I think that's great. Where can people find you if they're interested in engaging your services?
So they can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn. They can email me. That'd probably be a good way instead of going down the list of ways to contact me. Email me at kfair at fairassociates.com. So that's Kilo, Foxtrot, Echo, Harry, Romeo at Foxtrot, Echo, Harry, Romeo, Associates with an S.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. And you also have a great podcast. I believe it's called the Cliff Notes Pod.
Yes, sir. Cliff Notes Podcast, right? Cliff
Yeah.
with K, by the way. So
Cliff with a K. Yeah, I mean, it's a great podcast and there's a lot of interesting conversations and topics. And I think for anybody who's interested outside of just this podcast alone and this episode, going to listen to you on the podcast really gives you a glimpse and a little taste of what it's like to be around Cliff and to work with Cliff and what he's capable of doing and bringing out in people. I think, that maybe that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that you bring out the best in other people just by being you, which I appreciate enormously.
well, it takes one to know one, Blake. So
Hey,
you know, I say the same thing about you. It's very comfortable being around you, and you definitely open the room up to conversations. Very non-judgmental. I've experienced that both in your presence as well as on this podcast. So I thank you for being you as well, sir.
oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I'm getting better at saying thank you to compliments. So I'm just going to leave it there.
All right.
Um, so, all right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, do me a favor, go down and leave a 5-star review. If you are on YouTube, give us a like and a follow. If you did not enjoy this podcast, do me a favor, don't comment and don't give us a review because I'm trying to get 5 stars. So
Right. We're trying to develop.
you can email me separately at complaintsdepartment@workplacewanderer.com. That might bounce back. I haven't created that email just yet, but well, one day I will, I'm sure. Thank you everybody for listening. Again, Cliff, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Blake. I appreciate you.